Our next presenter is Katie Inman, and she will be talking about the ethics of cheap clothing. Right now, she is also undecided major, but I think she has great things headed for her. So please welcome Katie to the stage.
Hi, everybody. In the fashion world today, our coolness is commonly suggested by the fashions of the time. The conversation has instead shifted from what are you wearing to who are you wearing, led by innovative fashion designers and the fashion industry. After World War II, the level of consumerism has only increased among developed countries that have abundant access to resources up until the modern day, where recently fast fashion has come into place. Tasha Lewis, a professor at the Department in Fiber Science and Apparel Design at Cornell University, has commented on the increasingly rapid changes in fashion. She says, it used to be 4 seasons in a year. Now, it may be up to 11 or 15 or more. Today's discussion will be shifted to how are you wearing, with the rise of fast fashion and materials commonly produced for this purpose, the intercultural connections of fashion, and alternatives to give back to the planet as consumers. So the term fast fashion, as mentioned earlier, denotes cheap, consumable clothes that aren't meant to be lasting for an extensive period of time, but can only be worn for a few times before they lose their monetary value. So while some fabrics may be seen as environmentally friendly, others bring disastrous results to the environment through their production and thus impacts everyone involved in the process. One of the largest unsustainable fabrics that we know today is cotton. In our world today, we think that cotton's like a very friendly, very cheap crop, but farmers have been forced off their land in order to produce massive amounts of this cotton because it requires large amounts of land. In the United States, it requires 1/4 of all pesticides used to be used just for this one crop. Oops. Sorry. Okay. And then rayon. Rayon is a material that is sourced from primarily eucalyptus tree wood pulp, which sounds pretty natural, but its harvesting requires large amounts of water, which can be environmentally impacting to areas that don't receive a constant amount of rainfall. Polyester and nylon are man-made fibers that are also non-biodegradable and is a large benefactor to nitrous oxide, which is a large impactor that forms green gas, which is about 300 times plus as potent as carbon dioxide in our atmosphere today. Some of the processes involved in creating some of these materials are also pretty detrimental. Dyeing is a big factor. It requires the largest portion of water involved in making textiles because the water is washed out of clothes and then it just gets all these pesticides and herbicides and pollutes multiple sources of water. A major issue where this is at today is Indonesia, where their rivers, which a lot of people live by these, are being polluted, and even the water is being colored and chemically unsustainable to drink. And bleaching produces chlorine compounds, which is also harmful to aquatic environments, so you're not just impacting those on land. Some sustainable fabrics, on the other hand, are hemp, which has the potential to be massively produced, give nutrients back to the soil, and requires minimal agrochemicals needed to produce it. And it's also a very stiff and sturdy fiber. Bamboo is also a really popular sustainable fabric that is becoming into the market today. It is called a hypoallergenic, absorbent, fast-drying, and naturally antibacterial material. Let's see. And then some future potentials that we have for later years. Current projects that are being worked on now are recycled material that are being used to refashion women's fleece jackets. So while fast fashion can both impact and detriment developing countries worldwide, depending on the perspective held towards the results that it brings. So a major factor towards this is increased sales. Fast fashion was marked with an average annual growth 9.7% per year for the last 5 years, whereas average apparel companies only saw a growth of 6.8%. In China, which is one of the world's leading economies today, many of their workers work in factories and are only paid 12 to 18 cents per hour. And the really scary thing about this is the fact that a lot of countries want to mimic China in low-wage labor. The US is a large consumer of goods today. An individual in the United States is found to have thrown away about 68 pounds worth of fabric or textiles within a year. Donated clothes is a good way, in terms of solutions, donated clothes is a good way to kind of give back to the community and to the world. A lot of the fabrics and clothes that we don't want or we donate are actually sent to other countries around the world. The top 3 recipients of clothes are Russia, India, and Pakistan, whereas the US is the top exporter of products. However, with donated clothes, there is some limited economic growth because with these clothes that are being shipped worldwide, those receiving those goods will depend more on charities than they will about developing their economy. And then fast fashion is also not really meant to last for long periods of time. So you have larger amounts of clothes that are being produced, but by the time that people receive these clothes, they're not really worth wearing at that point. In addition, because women are targeted more towards clothes, there is a worldwide proportion of 7 times more clothes for women as there are for men. So men's clothes tend to need to be sold more, and that definitely impacts the economy of multiple countries that need these clothes to survive. So with the knowledge of how fabric production is truly a global affair, we as consumers can reflect our desire to revolutionize the fashion industry. Elizabeth Eden, the author of the book Overdressed, The Shockingly High Cost of Cheap Fashion, makes a distinction that while some clothes may be pricier in economic value to the purchaser, in the long run, the clothing will last much longer than fast fashion products. So, in addition, almost all countries are trading and receiving goods and services from another country. So clothing is truly a global industry. So even if you think that just throwing out a single t-shirt or a pair of jeans doesn't make a big deal, a lot of people will have that same mindset, and that can accumulate over time. So there are some modern incentives to recycle and think about the future. Some companies like H&M and similar clothing stores are initiating take-back programs. H&M initiated it back in 2013, and the idea behind it is that customers will give back their unwanted clothes to the store that can be recycled into future clothing. So it causes both the consumer and the manufacturer to think about what's going into the products and how it can further improve and eliminate our textile waste. In San Francisco, they are currently implementing a zero waste tolerance program, and they're hoping to achieve that goal by 2020. And they're doing that largely by initiating more recycling programs and just encouraging people to be less wasteful. So labeling products for their limited environmental impacts. So labeling products for limited environmental impacts is a current project of the international organization. It's, again, another goal to raise environmentalism to the consumer, because once they're aware of what's in their products, then they can have a better idea of how they can give back to the earth and just how these processes do negatively impact other countries besides just us, even though we might not see it. So in conclusion, instead of using as many resources as physically possible, as consumers, we must concern ourselves with how the clothes are produced, the global factors that impact virtually the entire planet, and the responsibility we hold to give back to the environment through other means than just our wallet. The fashion industry is unique in that it involves globalization, consumerism, and recycling. It limits the nature of how consumerism allows for other countries to have a chance to thrive. So if we hold back on our consumerism a little bit, other countries that may not have those opportunities can grow up a little bit more to the level that we are at. So while it may be easy to forget about those living in Africa, Asia, or other areas of the world who live on little money in comparison to countries like the United States and the developed world, the appearances of our clothes are overshadowed by the actualities that linger behind them, and how we contributed to them exhibits our attitude to how the world is cultivated. Thank you.